Okay, so at this point in the process, you should have my signature on a piece of paper. You should also have a signature on your rubric, okay? So this rubric is located in Google Classroom. You should be able to find it there. You need to copy down exactly the way it is, all the way down to the bottom, including the yellow, pink, and blue references at the bottom. So you have a signature on both of those things, okay? I'm gonna give you the next demonstration using this design here that I just drew really quickly. Step one is you have my signature on here. Step two, you're gonna cut out the entirety of the rectangle, and you're going to do so carefully. It's kind of a theme throughout my entire class. Is everything you're doing, you do with purpose, you do it carefully, you do it accurately, you do it exactly the way you were told to do it. Students who have the most difficulty are students who hear me say, do A, B, and C, and in the end, they kind of do something that's kind of like A, and they skip over B, and they don't really need to do B, right? Who needs B? And then C, they kind of do that as well. They do a pretty good job on C, but they're not really worried about whether or not they do a really good job. Do me a favor and stop them from making their noise. Just have them wait outside for a bit. All right, so I'm going to very carefully and accurately cut out this block. Okay. I'm going to steal your block, Levi. You're going to grab another one. Okay. So I have the entire thing cut out. Okay. This thing is the same size. I'm noticing this thing is slightly larger than my block, and that has to do with the thickness of my pencil that I was using. So I'm actually going to trim that to make sure that it is that these two bottom corners must line up perfectly on the bottom of this thing here. So I'm actually going to cut off a little bit of this thing right here. To make sure that these two dots right here line up perfectly with the length of this block of wood. Okay. I'm going to, first off, should have done this before I cut it out. This is carbon paper. Carbon paper has a dark side and a light side. The dark side has a bunch of carbon all over it. So if I were to take this and do this, it's going to take that, where I pressed it, you can actually see that there's a little bit of a relief. It's lost a little carbon here because it's on the back of this paper. Okay, so if I were to sign this thing, it's going to show up on the other side in reverse. Okay, so the first thing you should have done is to take a piece of carbon paper and draw your design while having it sit on top of a dark piece of carbon paper. This should be on the dark side is up. Please make sure you do that right. Otherwise, you're going to be putting the carbon onto this table, which is not the end of the world, but does not need to be done. Okay, so by doing that, you can see that I've scratched the design. I've got the car design here, but I've also got it here. On the same piece of paper, it's reversed. Now, I'm going to take a moment to put this in my vise. Clamping down, nice and square. Clamp it down a little bit. I'm going to take this piece of paper, I'm going to put it right where I want it, and what is most important right now is the bottom two corners are on there very accurately, exactly in the front, exactly in the back. The bottom is right up against that bottom edge right there. Okay? The student who's not going to do a very good job on this assignment is going to do this quickly without much concern. It's going to be hanging over on one side. It's going to be loose. It's going to be moving around. It's going to be not accurate. And they're going to spend so much more time on this car in the end because of that inaccuracy. They'll think they'll be saving themselves about 10 seconds now and costing themselves 3 days later. Okay, this is right down there on that surface. It's taped down really well right there. I'm going to need to get some more tape in this classroom. The front is very accurately right there, right where it's supposed to be, and taped down. Okay, so this is now taped down very accurately, exactly on these corners, the bottom of the car, not the leftover paper on the top, right? You're taping the bottom of the car. You can fold that up, take a piece of carbon paper, put that right there, bring this down, and now, when I go over this line, I really want to make sure that my paper's not moving around. I have transferred the image onto my block of wood. Okay? Now, I'm going to loosen this thing, and this is where a lot of you are going to make a mistake. I'm going to take this thing off of here carefully. I'm going to go ahead and fold that over. I'm not going to try to reuse that tape. Okay, so the car was on here like this. It needs to be the same on the other side. It needs to be brought from here to over here. What people do is they go like this, and then they go like that. And if you look at this car right now, this is the back of the car, right? But on this side, it's the front of the car. Okay? It can't be the back of the car on this side and the front of the car on that side. It does not work. So the correct way to do this is to have it here, and then go right underneath, put it over there. You should also notice that this is the back side. This is the one we drew last time. This is the one you're drawing this time. So a little bit of common sense, a little bit of thought and effort saves you the trouble of drawing the whole thing and finding out that it's wrong. Okay, now I'm going to tape this thing down. Once again, I'm going to be extremely careful to make sure I'm putting exactly where I want it to be. Right on that corner. Nice and flat right along the bottom. This is not a time to be yapping at your friends. Carbon paper. Dark side goes down against the surface of the wood. Put this thing down. This thing is not shimmying around. It's not loose. It's very tightly stuck down. It's right in the corners. It's right on the bottom. Okay. This is very much the story of the turtle, the tortoise, and the hare. Kids who work really fast because they're in a hurry to get done are usually the last kids to actually get done. Okay, so we have now transferred the image onto both sides. Okay? The next thing I want you to do is you're going to use a square. I want you to notice how often I'm using this thing, by the way, because by putting in the Jorgensen clamp, then I can no longer have to hold this thing up. Okay? I'm going to use this square to transfer that line across. This is where I tell you that this was not made by Ollivander and Harry Potter. This is not magical. You cannot just lay it down and expect something to be square. It has to be used correctly. Otherwise, it's not telling you anything. If I set this thing down on here and draw a line like that, I'm not doing anything other than using it as a straight edge. To be used as a square, you need to squeeze it up against this side here and then draw that line, because this is a perfect 90-degree angle. Okay, people do this all the time. They draw like that, and it really it annoys me, because this is not being used as a square. This is a tool that you need to learn how to use it. So I have now drawn a line across there. I'm going to do the same thing across the front. Now, if I did a good job, then this line should be touching this side and this side. How's it look? Looks pretty accurate there. Looks pretty accurate there. Actually, my line's a little light. carbon paper didn't quite go all the way on there. But it's pretty accurate right there. The front is accurate here, front is accurate there. That tells me right away that I've done a pretty good job, okay? Because that's the goal here, is to make both cars the same on the two sides. And by checking that, you've accomplished that. So I'm gonna require you to have your squaring lines on the front and the back, but I'm also gonna require at least 3 squaring lines across the top. So here's what you're going to do. You're gonna pick 3 spots. You're gonna draw a line here, making sure this is very square up against this edge. Do not do that, because you're just really wasting your time. It's not square. Put that up against the thing, draw a line, nice and square. Line it up with here, right there, and right about here. Now what you're going to do when you're doing that, what you're going to do is you're going to allow me a chance to check that measurement. That's 3/4 of an inch there. Should be the same thing over here, which it is, 3/4 of an inch. It also potentially allows me to make sure things are lined up this direction as well, which means I drew this car design specifically. I included these 2 spots so that I would be able to do this later. Whenever you have an opportunity to do one of these squaring lines with one of those spots, like there, then when I go all the way over, it should also line up there too. This should help me to check a couple of things when you come up and bring me your car design. I can take this measurement and make sure it's the same over there, but I also note, let's see how that's lining up at that spot, and it's lining up on that side too. This tells me that it was drawn correctly. Same thing here, drew a line right there, and transfer the line across the top, and across the bottom, or across over here. And it seems to have lined up fairly well. That tells me that this is probably better off to be like that. Like that, okay? This is what you need to bring to me. Your car drawn accurately on both sides, squaring lines on the front and the back, and at least 3 going across the top. If you have anywhere on your car where there's a specific spot, you should use those as references so that we can also check to make sure things are lined up correct. What you're gonna get in the end, if you've done a good job, is my signature on the bottom of the car, which gives you permission to start cutting and moving on to the next video.